Hey, Political Science 321. Um, I don't really have a lot of information for you outside. I told you in the previous video that your final exam is going to be a take home. You have two questions. Um, the questions sort of speak for themselves. If you have any questions, feel free to email me back and ask. Um, as far as me sort of wrapping up the class, I want you to go and watch. Let me actually look this up because I want to be correct. Um, The shock doctrine. The shock doctrine. So I want you to watch the shock doctrine. You can find it on YouTube. Just Naomi Klein with a K, Klein with a K. Um, shock doctrine, and we were on like an hour, like at the hour mark. So I want you to watch the next 15 to 20 minutes. So I'll try to look for the actual link of the video, but like I want you to continue watching that because I want you to see who profited from the war and how much they profited. I think that's the part that we were on, but there was another piece in terms of the military contractors, and that's something completely massively new that our military is doing. Is now we're paying private corporations to provide a lot of the services, the military services in these areas where before we would have troops, and we still have troops that we pay $20,000 a year plus free subsidized housing, um, but then we pay these private contractors who charge us for each one of their soldiers. They're basically mercenaries, and they charge us up to $100 to $200,000 per soldier. So we'll pay private soldiers way more money than we'll pay public volunteer soldiers. And that's just ridiculously outlandish to me, and it's also wasteful. Um, and the public doesn't really know about this. So I want you to finish watching the shock doctrine so you can see that part. But I also want you to sort of think about the importance of like why we need alternative press and alternative media, non-corporate media specifically, um, so that we have this information, so that we can hold our elected people accountable, so that we can challenge people who vote in the interest of money and in the interest of like war, um, which is what produces like all the weapons and guns and the killing machines that we need that we need supposedly to go to war, but they end up on the street and they end up being the thing that we are scared to go to school for. This place is supposed to be safe. Um, and so this is important information. So on your final, I'm basically going to ask you like, what is the purpose and the role of alternative media in this type of economy, and why isn't the corporate media challenging the war industry? um, and and it's because there's a lot of money to be made in advertising, and and so ultimately, and what I try to do in this class is I try to construct a narrative for you about the importance and the role that hegemonic discourses play in constructing our reality, but also our role in our agency. The reason we aren't told the things that we should know is because ultimately that's what they're trying to take. They're trying to take our agency. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take away any agency that we have to change things. If we know, then we can act. They don't want us to act. They want us to stay in our quotidian lives, go to work every day, and do the sort of daily sort of things. Go to school, go to work, come home tired, eat, do some homework, get some sleep, and wake up next day and do it again. And so, an informed citizenry wouldn't allow a lot of these things to happen. At least that's my hope. Um, and so I'm going to ask you some, part of the question is going to be sort of around that in terms of the concept of agency. Um, but ultimately, that's really what I want you to get out of this class is like how discourses condition how we perceive of our own world, and I want you to challenge your own preconceptions about your own world, and I want you, more importantly, to see if we can create counter hegemonic discourses that challenge oppression, that challenge the politics of our society, and challenge them in a positive way so we can push them in a positive direction. And what has been the role of the media in constructing our current realities, that are messed up realities. I mean, we're suffering through this threat, and I know it wasn't a credible threat or whatever, but like that doesn't change the shock factor. That doesn't change the fear that that exists, and that's very real. Um, Ultimately, I hope that you can sort of overcome it, and like not let that sort of like define your take their your agency away. Um, but I want us to help this world have more political agency, and the only way to do that is to have more information about the possibilities. Oftentimes, people say, "Well, no, that's just the way things are." Like things are, this society sucks. It's just the way it is. It's always gonna be like that, and I don't believe that. I wouldn't teach what I teach if I believed that. I believe that we have the power to change our world and our society, and the history of the world has been a history of constant change and constant struggle. Uh, and the role that the stories and the discourses and the counter hegemonic projects has a huge role in that. Like, we need to educate more people about what the possibilities are. We need to have conversations about what the possibilities are. We can do so much better. Um, we have the capacity as human beings to think about better ways of doing things. Um, and part of the problem with that is, how do we get that information out there? Um, how do we challenge, you know, hegemonic conceptions of like how the society is supposed to work? I'm not interested in how it's supposed to work according to who rules this society and who controls this society. I'm interested in the discourses around how it can work better for everyone. How can we get more information, better information, correct information, um, different information that challenges each other? Like, how do we sift through the different information that we receive, and people have agency to and to make up their own decisions? Like Chomsky, he said himself, like, don't believe me because I said it. Like, decide for yourself. Um, I think we have, as human beings, the capacity to create better ways of doing things, but better politics. But it takes having access to information, and the media has a huge role in that. And their role in it currently is to perpetuate our current society because of who runs it. It's made based on corporate money and profits. And long term, can we get good information about alternatives? Can we develop information about alternatives that function, that work? And ultimately, like, that's what I wanted you to get out of this class. And how do we perpetuate those counter hegemonic discourses that will help people feel like they have agency, and that will help people feel like they can change the society? Because ultimately, that's what we need. We need we need to be able to change all the terrible politics that are occurring in our lifetime, and we need to create a better world. And maybe some of y'all feel defeated, but we can. We have to be in solidarity with each other. We have to understand each other's struggles, and we have to go out and make sure that we question official stories that are being told to us, and ask who stands to benefit from this perspective. And at the end of the day, make a decision about what you believe in terms of whose agenda you think is the correct agenda. And I was talking to a student the other day. He's like, everyone has an agenda, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm cool with certain people's agenda. Like, I'm good with Elizabeth Warren's agenda. She wants to end student debt. I'm good with that agenda. I'm good with Bernie Sanders' agenda. I'm good with agendas where people want to treat people like human beings. I'm good with agendas where people feel like other people have capacity. I'm good with agendas that try to treat workers like human beings and allow them to live with dignity. I'm good with those agendas. And at the end of the day, um, you know, what are the ways that we can help people think in those terms? Um, I'll provide more information about the specific final sort of questions and whatnot when I email you these things. Or, I mean, you probably already received it because this is how I'm going to link to it. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me over the weekend. I'll try to get to them. Um, it's Mother's Day weekend, so people are going to be busy, but I will. Yeah, it's been a pleasure teaching this class. I appreciate you having listened to what I'm trying to have a conversation with you about, and I hope that you continue to sort of think in these ways, and begin to challenge all the authority in our lives. Ultimately, that's what this is about. Don't perpetuate, don't contribute to the manufacture of consent. Um, it's those times in our history, in American history, where we don't challenge authority and we consent to the the oppression that is creeping in, especially in these authoritarian times. And we need to challenge that. We need to make sure that our representatives in Congress and all locally, they know, like, no, we won't stand for this. We don't care who's president. We don't care who's, like, we as human beings will not stand for kids in cages. We won't stand for the dehumanization of, like, people everywhere. Um, so remember, discourses matter, and we have to challenge discourses that seek to dehumanize us. Ultimately, that's what this is about. Um, Been a pleasure teaching this class. I hope. Oh, I was gonna say a couple of things about the reading. Robert McChesney, make sure that you focus on him. He really wraps up everything really nicely. I know I didn't cover him very well, but it's a straightforward read. How is corporate media a threat to democracy? I mean, he lays it out, like, plainly. And we've already sort of discussed it and in parts, not specifically, but I mean, you all kind of get the picture by his style. And you should use Robert McChesney to elaborate that in your exam. Um, and then lastly, News Incorporated, the articles there, some of them focus on the role that alternative media plays in democratizing our society so people have better information. Make sure you sort of focus on those. And obviously static. You know, the last part of the class, I've tried to focus. I know that I've been talking about war, but it's really about the relationship between, like, how we went to war in Iraq and the disconnect between that and the information that we were getting, and how alternative media had that information. And one of the struggles is the information was there. There was journalists who were covering it, but they don't get the airtime. So your role in the society moving forward after this class is, how do you help perpetuate good information and making sure that all your friends and all your circles and all your networks have access to information and ask good questions. Sometimes it's not even about having answers. It's about just asking good questions, like, hey, oh yeah, Venezuela, Maduro, he's a dictator. Okay, yeah, that's fine. But why all of a sudden do we have an interest in Venezuela? Um, there's dictators in other parts of the world. I mean, Pakistan, I think, is run by a dictator. Uh, why, why don't we have an interest over there? Just asking that question alone helps resituate people's thinking, where it gets them to think critically. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. That's what the role of any good media, it should and ought to be, is to get you to think critically, not for us to tell people what they should be thinking. That's not the role of any type of media. It's, how do we get people to think critically about the world that they live in. And good journalism and good media does that. And that's why I included films, like, people like Hollywood films and movie profit driven films, because even you can even do that with films. And V for Vendetta, The Green Zone, The Matrix, and some of those, Elysium, some of those, they get you to think critically about, why don't people have access to universal health care, especially if we have the means and the capacity to do it. Um, Obviously we don't have the capacity to, like, cure all the diseases like the little machine did, but, like, we can approximate that. Um, there isn't a reason why we have the capacity, we have the resources to do it. Why don't we do it? And nobody's asking those questions, and good journalists are, and we need to help those stories and those counter narratives, counter hegemonic discourses. We need to help those, um, like, be heard more, because they don't have advertising dollars. So hopefully you all will pay more attention to some of those kind of narratives. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I will see you in class during the final, the same time that our final is supposed to meet. If you don't show up to the final exam on the day and time that we were supposed to meet and the location we're supposed to meet, I will dock you on your final exam, your take-home final exam. I still want to meet one more time just to wrap things up one more time, and we have to have an in-class. It's mandatory university policy. We have to have an in-class activity. So I will meet you all the day of the final. If anything else changes, I'll be in touch, but that's the plan for right now. We're meeting the same time, the same day that we would have met during the final, but your final exam won't be due until later that night. But we're still meeting. At least I just want to say I feel like I didn't get to sort of wrap up with you, and I want to check in with you all and see how you're doing, and also like congratulate some of those of you that are graduating um, one last time before like graduation because it gets busy with family and whatnot. But I'll see you all next week.